Good morning, Broncos fans. As we're getting the live streams going, I just want to say that if you're in the Mountain Time Zone or if you're in another time zone, you will be watching a great show this morning. We've got a special guest coming in to talk about a legend of Mile High, along with a legend maybe in some other areas. So thanks for joining the show. I'm Thomas Hall. This is Legends of Mile High, where we talk about current events and history. And I know that we are knee deep in training camp, but I thought I'd interrupt some training camp talk with a little bit of history. Broncos legend Keith Traylor. I'm pleased to introduce to Broncos country my guest, Jack Silverstein. He's a sports researcher for Windy City Gridiron. And you can also check out his research by subscribing to A Shot on Elo. And he's currently writing a book about the 90s Bulls called Six Rings. Now, I've been on several podcasts with Jack, and I'll tell you, he's an incredible researcher. He digs into old newspaper clippings, microfilm, that type of stuff to get the important bits of information that most people miss. And he has a great perspective on football. And I'm bringing him in to have a perspective from a Bears side of the equation, because Keith Traylor was a star for the Bears as well. So it's going to be an interesting show. So welcome, Jack. And welcome to the show. Thank you for joining, Jack. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. Can you hear me and see me all right?
Yes, we can. We can hear and see you. So we're going to get started here in just a second. I just want to say, if you're really enjoying the show, you like it, hit the like button. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle YouTube. There's a lot of information that we bring you every morning, every evening, and of course on our website. Also check out Jack's work on Shot of Elo, and we'll check out a little bit of the chat. We got some people coming in this morning. Before we just jump in, we got Del Fleming coming in this morning saying that he really likes the show because how we dig into the history. So good morning, Dale. Appreciate you jumping in here and saying that this morning. This is why we all do this, is to bring you guys information. And I love the history of the Broncos. And I know, Jack, I know you love history as well. Lawrence Rivera's coming in. Good morning, everyone. Long night, but a new day to make the best of it. So, Jack, I'm going to jump in and talk about Keith Traylor. Before I do that, I'm going to bring out his rookie card here. As you can see, he was number 54. He was drafted in the third round by the Denver Broncos as an inside linebacker, which is pretty interesting. And he actually played for several teams, 6, I believe, to be exact. If you count his stint with the Raiders in 93, that was 7 teams. But he played for Denver for 2 seasons as an inside linebacker, went to Green Bay, then Kansas City, and then he went to Green Bay, then he went to the NFL Europe, or World Football League, or World League of American Football, whatever they were calling it back then, and actually to bulk up and become a defensive tackle. It's pretty interesting. So he went from 260 pounds, and then when he came back to Denver in 1997, he was around 325, and he kept growing from there. But he never lost his athleticism, which was pretty interesting to me. So he came back to Denver and won 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos in 97, 98. And if you don't think he's a Broncos legend, you should change your outlook on that, because he was a key cog in that defense that helped the Broncos win those 2 Super Bowls. So, Jack, what's your perspective on his kind of transition from an inside linebacker that wasn't, he was athletic, but not really for an inside linebacker at 260 pounds, transitioned to defensive tackle and never really lost that athleticism?
Yeah, the one play that everyone remembers as a Bears fan is the 67-yard interception return against Jacksonville. And we'll get to that, but I think that was key information that a lot of Bears fans didn't realize. I didn't realize. I didn't know until much later that he had started at a much lighter weight and as an inside linebacker. So when we saw that play, our big defensive tackle moving down the field, I don't think people really knew that, because like you said, he left Denver. He had a little bit of like a mini career elsewhere, and by the time we knew him, he was the stalwart up front with Tanuvasa, and opening space up for Aldridge and whoever the other linebackers were there, and then obviously lined up next to Neil Smith. So I don't think that we really had that insight. We just thought of him as this big defensive tackle.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting because they show that interception in Chicago, that long interception return. However, I would say that an even better interception happened with Denver in '97 after the big snow storm in Denver, where people had to walk to the airport sometimes to get on the plane to fly to Buffalo. And Keith Traylor actually had a 62-yard interception return that ended up as his touchdown. Another big man rumbling down the field, same thing. They don't show that one as much, but they show the one in Chicago, which was very interesting.
It's that Chicago bias, man. You can't trust us Bears to lay low. It's that we got Hall of Famers, we got retired numbers. It's all that bias.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to talk about Traylor, but it's pretty interesting to watch his career. And like I said, he came in inside linebacker. He made the switch he consciously decided I'm going to start to defensive tackle, and he bulked up. He was about 325, like I said, he played for Kansas City for a couple seasons, came back to Denver. And then by the time his career was over, he was around 340, maybe a little heavier, and he still could move. He was a very athletic person. Ended up winning another Super Bowl with the New England Patriots, which is interesting. But yeah, he was in my book, he was a key cog in that defensive line for the Broncos, and he also was the same in Chicago. He was a key factor in a lot of their success in Chicago when he was there.
Yeah, so the background of Keith Traylor coming to Chicago, I think this is interesting to do this show. And obviously, I'm a Bears guy jumping on a Broncos show. But hopefully, some of my fellow Bears fans are watching. And what I think is neat about that is that these players do travel and they create these legacies in multiple cities, and you maybe only follow your guy when he arrives. Maybe you follow him after he leaves, maybe not, but there is this connective tissue. So for Broncos fans who obviously loved Keith Traylor, the background here is that the Bears in '99 had this big, exciting season. We only won 6 games, but we'd been 4-12 the 2 previous years. It was Dick Duran's first year as a head coach, so we thought, all right, things are coming along. And then we took this big step backward in 2000 and put Duran on the hot seat. And so we were coming into 2001 feeling like, all right, we need to definitely expand on the offense, because we had spent first-round picks recently on Curtis Enis, who wasn't working out, and Cade McNown, who we didn't know it at the time, but he had played his last snap for the Bears. We traded him in the 2001 offseason. So we came in from a draft perspective, we were looking offense. We went David Terrell from Michigan, Anthony Thomas from Michigan. But from a free agency standpoint, the one big thing that we had on the Bears in 2000 was we had this strength up the middle with our 2 at, and we had Mike Brown at safety. And so had Tony Parrish at safety. So we knew we were strong up the middle. We had these 2 young linebackers who were flanking Urlacher, Warwick Holman, and Roosevelt Colvin, who were in their 3rd year. They looked like they were set to hold those outside spots. And we decided, you know what? We're going to do what the Baltimore Ravens did the year before. And we're going to get big in the middle up front, because we had just watched this Ravens team win a Super Bowl with an offense that went 5 straight weeks. Do you remember that, Tom? They went 5 straight weeks without a touchdown, the offense of Baltimore.
Right.
But you've got Ray Lewis, who's clearly the best middle linebacker in the game, and we have Brian Urlacher, who had just won, Defensive Rookie of the Year and looked like he was going to be a star. I mean, he had 8 sacks his rookie season, and tackles all over the field and all that speed. So the Bears started looking at big defensive tackles, specifically to match what Baltimore did with Sam Adams and Tony Siragusa. And the Bears general manager at the time, Mark Hatley, said that specifically. It wasn't like fan or media speculation. He specifically was like, we want to do what Baltimore did and put those big guys in the middle. So we started looking at 3 defensive tackles. We were looking at Traylor from Denver. We were looking at Ted Washington from Buffalo. And then the other one, and I'd forgotten about this until I started getting into the newspaper reporting of the day, we were looking at Gilbert Brown from the Packers. So you were looking at 3 guys, they tallied up, who were about a combined 1,000 pounds. So between, those 3 guys, we were going to have 2 guys in the middle who took up a lot of space. And we signed Traylor first and then still went out and added Ted Washington. And for us, it wasn't just one or the other. It was the fact that we had both. And the experience for Bears fans with Keith Traylor was, here's a guy who just won 2 championships as a starter, and those Denver teams, I know they were known for their offense, but those defenses were tough with obviously Steve Atwater and Romo, not my favorite dude in the world, but tough guy and great player. And like I said, Neil Smith, who is one of my favorites, or was one of my favorites back in the day. I think Ray Crockett. I love that defense. And Keith Traylor was a big part of it. So the fact that we were adding a 2-time champ up front and Ted Washington, they were going to take up all this space and take on all these blockers and really free up all this speed. I mean, we talk about Urlacher because he's the Hall of Famer. He's the one who stayed with the team. But Roosevelt Colvin and Warwick Holdman were dynamic linebackers. Holdman was the tackle machine. Rosie was the sack guy, and Rosie went on to be a 3-4 edge guy for the Patriots when they in 03 and 04 when they went to the 3-4. So Rosie was awesome, Warwick was awesome, Brian Urlacher was great, and these 2 guys up front were just going to be these maulers, just take up all this space. This combined, whatever it was, 650, 650 pounds. And you felt their authority as well. Ted Washington, having come at the tail end of that Buffalo run, he wasn't on those Super Bowl teams, but, he was still, they still had that weight. No pun intended. Those Buffalo teams still had that gravitas when he was there with Thurman and Bruce Smith and Kelly and Andre Reed. So you were getting 2 guys who were leaders, who were vets, who had playoff pedigree, one who had 2 championships, and they had this bulk to them. The first week of our season was against Baltimore, the defending champs, and we gave them a run for their money. And it was like, all right, you guys have your 2 defensive tackles and your great middle linebacker. Now we have our 2 defensive tackles, our great middle linebacker. So we were filled with confidence, and a lot of that was from knowing, hey, Keith Traylor just won these 2 championships with the Denver Broncos. Like, this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a key cog in the Denver Broncos as well, and also Ted Washington played for the Denver Broncos as well. So
Right.
before he arrived, but yeah, Traylor lined up on the defensive line for the Broncos, helped them into 2 Super Bowls. And Gary, I'm going to just jump in here. Gary Leeds Palmer from Facebook's coming in saying, "Good morning, Thomas." Good morning to you, Gary. Appreciate the support. Appreciate you coming in and listening to the talk about our Keith Traylor from the Broncos, the Bears perspective. I just want Jack. I just want to ask you one quick question before I kind of wrap this up. I know that camp's going pretty heavy right now. I'm going to get your perspective on something that Broncos have been kind of talking about for a while. That is Justin Fields. The Broncos took Patrick Surtain over Justin Fields. What's your take on Justin
Right.
Fields? And I mean, Surtain in camp has been incredible. He's been locking down the number one receiver of the Broncos in camp. He's got all pro written all over him. What's your take on Justin Fields?
Well, Justin had a rough rookie year, as everybody knows, and that was in large part due to the mess that our coaching situation was. So now we're at a reset. The reports out of camp and the reporting and the footage has been spotty, and we don't have the greatest set of weapons around him. He is learning a new offense. This is his first year with the ones. It's his first year coming in as starting quarterback, so it's a very different situation than last year. I'm very much let's just chill and let's see how this develops preseason. I'm not making much out of the reports, good or bad, out of Bears camp. I just can't jump in like that. There's so much that's changing for him. I think on a personal level, I think everybody here likes Justin Fields a lot. It's funny that you guys ended up with Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson was somebody who the Bears were looking at last year when, he and the Seahawks were falling out of favor with each other. And there were a lot of rumors that the Bears were going to try to put some deal together to acquire Russell Wilson. So then when we didn't do that, we moved up, we got Fields. Then there was kind of talk during the rookie year, sports radio talk and just conversation like, all right, would you trade Justin Fields right now for Russell Wilson? And I think at the time, because he was a rookie, a lot of people would, because, he's Russell Wilson. But at the same time, people were very excited about seeing what Justin could do, this young, dynamic QB. And obviously, we all know him from the Big Ten. So, a lot of people in Chicago had already watched him, a lot more than Trubisky, who had played at North Carolina and also hadn't played nearly as much as Justin had played at Ohio State. So I think that Bears fans overall are excited. I think we're very frustrated with having not won a Super Bowl since '85, having not been in a Super Bowl since '06. Our paltry number of division titles. We're about to lose the NFL record for most wins by a franchise to Green Bay. Green Bay is going to pass us at some point this year. And what's messed up is that they could end up passing us when we play them at the start of the season, I think week 2. So we got a lot of real problems. We've got a lot of existential problems here in Bears Nation. But overall, we're excited about Justin Fields. And I mean, what more can we say? I mean, we're a mess, man. We're a mess. We're a franchise that is a mom and pop shop that just wants to push history. And I say this as a historian. We've got the stadium kerfluffle. It's all bad, bro. It is all bad. But hopefully Justin Fields is going to be the ray of light that we all need him to be. And one more thing on Keith Traylor and the 0-1 Bears. It worked. It worked. I mean, we jumped up from, I think, like 21st against the run to 2nd against the run. We jumped up to the best defense in the NFL, number 1 in points allowed. I think we were number 2 in yards allowed. And obviously, we went 13-3. We won the division. We had our top 12 defenders played 16 games. It was just one of those blessed seasons. Mike Brown's back-to-back walk-off interception returns, never been done in NFL history. And for any Bears fans, and heck, any Broncos fans who want a good read and some good fun, check out my story on Windy City Gridiron, The Miracles of Mike Brown, where I talk about that 2001 team and those back-to-back pick sixes in overtime, the walk-offs that Mike Brown had. Never been done in NFL history. And Keith Traylor was just a huge part of that season. Obviously, that was kind of it. We had all these injuries in 2002. It didn't work out. We were in Champaign, another stadium problem. And then by 2003, Ted Washington was gone. He went to New England, and he was a starter on their 2003 team. And then when Ted Washington left, Keith Traylor followed him. And he went from the Bears to New England, and he won a championship with the Patriots. So Rosie Colvin won a championship with the Patriots. Jim Miller won a championship with the Patriots. A lot of Bears went over to New England and got themselves a Super Bowl ring, and that's fine by me. I was happy for all of them. So Keith Traylor is he holds a special part for Bears fans because of that return. And it was funny that not funny, I shouldn't put it that way, but that Jaguars game was supposed to be week 2, and that was the game that got pushed back because of 9/11. And as a result, it was our final game of the season, and Keith Traylor joined, Wilbur Marshall, obviously.
We're losing you, Jack. I'm sorry. We're losing connection with you. I just want to say thanks a lot for jumping on. Appreciate the insight from Bears perspective on Keith Traylor, and also a little bit on Justin Fields. And so we're gonna. So thank you very much. Sorry that we lost connection there. I'm going to jump into a few camp stories now. If anybody has any questions about Keith Traylor, just throw it in the chat. We'll revisit that. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Again, thank you for joining, Jack. Appreciate it. So a couple camp stories as we're going here. I know that there's a few things going on. PJ Locke was injured towards the end of practice yesterday, and that's a little bit of a concern. I have not heard if he's doing okay or not, what the extent of that injury is. And I'll say that position, the safety position, is one that is going to be an interesting battle to watch when that comes around, because when preseason comes around, because there are 3 safeties who are vying for that last spot, I believe. So you've got PJ Locke, who I kind of thought that was, going to be one of those numbered casualties. He's playing excellent in camp, pushing for a role. You've got a couple draft picks in Jamar Johnson and Delarrin Turner-Yell, who are in the mix as well. You're going to see somebody get booted off of the team come cut down day that are Broncos fans are going to wish that they could have kept, in my opinion. I mean, Jamar Johnson's, he's a bit of an unknown. Didn't really play last year, but they did invest a pick in him. So we're going to be watching that for sure. Another area that I'm really interested in, which is the edge rusher position. We've got another battle going on between Browning, Reed, Benito, and Jonathan Cooper and Christopher Allen. And those are only a couple spots left too. So those are going to be huge to watch as we go along. So I'm just going to give you a reminder. I'm going to be at training camp on Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to be checking out those in particular, and also checking out anything that you want me to see. So if you guys have interest in any positions, or you want me to check out a specific player, put it in the chat, put it in the comments, or you can always send me a message or hit me up on Twitter at Thomas Hall NFL, and I'll check out those players that you are interested in, and give you a full report next Friday when I talk about camp. Definitely wanted to talk about a little bit more about the history of the game, talk a little bit about Keith Traylor. And it was his interesting story. So we had a little bit of difficulty on that. So apologize. Oh, hey, Jack, you're back.
Hi. Sorry. I would just have a proper goodbye.
That's okay. Yeah. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Appreciate that you jumped in and joined, even though you got, a lot going on, and appreciate you joining from your car and whatnot. So, and thanks for the perspective from the Bears side of things when it comes to Keith Traylor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. And it's cool, I think, to see. Obviously, we all love the players who were with our franchise, for their entire careers. And those players are special in another way, whether they're Hall of Fame guys or whether they are more role players who just stayed for a very long time. But I think there's also something really interesting and special about players who made lasting memories and legacies with multiple teams and multiple fan bases.
the one that I always look at is the way that Thomas Jones came to the Bears. Man, we love Thomas Jones, but then I see like Jets fans love Thomas Jones like just as much. KC fans, and he wasn't there, I think, but 2 years. They love Thomas Jones. So it's really interesting to see this love for Keith Traylor, Denver fans, obviously Chicago fans. And for us, he was here 3 years, but it was really just that one big year in 01. That's where it all stems from. 02 is this lost season. And then 03 he played really well. And then I was happy to see him go to New England and get to win that title. And one other thing on Keith Traylor, you mentioned obviously that he started his career as an inside linebacker in Denver, and with us, he was a D-tack in the 4-3. When he went to New England, obviously he was playing the nose. So versatile as well to be able to, play at that inside linebacker spot, then go up front, and then to be able to, switch your technique and play in a different scheme, and to think about someone who had the athleticism to play inside linebacker and developed the strength to play nose in a 3-4 is at a championship level, it's pretty impressive. So he won rings, not exactly at two different positions, but basically at two different positions, defensive tackle in a 4-3 versus that nose spot, in New England with Grinnell and Belichick. So I just thought that was an interesting point. And yeah, man, we love Keith Traylor. We love that return, and appreciate you having me on. And shout out to everybody in the comments who's dropping things about the Bears. I saw your little Aaron Rodgers comment. We see you. Don't think I don't see that. I didn't in the car, but now I do.
Well, thanks a lot, Jack. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It was fun. And again, when it comes to Keith Traylor, it seems like people don't recognize his impact across many teams. But, with the Broncos in particular, I hold Keith Traylor, in pretty high regard because of what he was able to do. Because, it wasn't until he really showed up that the defense lost, that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in 1996, that they lost that game for them. And that was a huge upset. And Keith Traylor came back he came back to Denver the next year as a defensive tackle. And that, they marched through the playoffs both years pretty much. There was a little bit of hiccups here and there, some close games, but that defense really was solidified, and you didn't see that upset again. Because John Elway in that game brought them back more than once within striking distance to win that game, and the defense just folded both times. So
Brunell was just too good. he had his career day, and Jimmy Smith too, man. I can just still see that. I'm not trying to bring up bad memories, but
it is a bad memory, but it's a nice contrast to look at Keith Traylor. So Broncos fans, when you think about Keith Traylor, he's obviously was never really highly respected across the league because he bounced around a lot. But he was a key factor for those Broncos Super Bowls. So, keep him in your hearts. I doubt he'll ever be a Ring of Famer, definitely not a Hall of Famer, but he was definitely an important part of the defense. So thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. I know you're a busy man.
That's okay. I appreciate you having me. And shout out to all of the people who are making phones these days and Wi-Fi, because I was literally doing a podcast from the car. And I know we tend to look at it and say, oh, the technology failed us. I don't know. The technology did pretty good. So anybody who's out there, you're working on the future of our communications, keep it up.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it. So I'm going to jump back into the chat. There's a few things that one thing that I want to point out, that there's some chatter about Ma'a Tanuvasa. Now, I think that's the coolest name that Broncos player that has ever played for the orange and blue. Really, I love. He was a key cog in those Super Bowls as well. But his name is it's an amazing name, and I really want to have a portion of the show coming up where we talk about some of these incredible names in Broncos history, because there's a few of them that are just really cool names, and maybe they weren't stars or whatever or Super Bowl winners, but it is fun to kind of look at those cool names. But Tanuvasa is one of my favorites. Can play defensive tackle, defensive end, had 8.5 sacks, or 8 sacks in 97 in a reserve role. Very, very impressive. So, think about those names. Throw them in the chat when you get a chance. We'll bring them up and talk about them. So I'm going to just, sorry about jumping back and forth with the technical difficulties, but I'm just going to jump back into a couple more storylines from camp just to keep us up to date before we close out the show. And that has to do with the right guard position. That's another interesting battle to watch, because when this season first kind of started, I thought that they brought Graham Glasgow back in order to solidify that right guard position again. But from what we're seeing, it is a battle between Miners and Muti for that role. And it looks like Glasgow is kind of on the outside looking in. And he may be a good flex piece that they keep around that can play both guards and maybe center in a pinch. But I'm not sure that he may not be around when we see that cut come down on August 30th. So another one to watch. I'm going to be out at camp again. If you're going to be out there at camp too, checking it out, come by and say hi. I appreciate it. Dale Fleming, I appreciate the comment. Great show, Thomas and Scott, as always. And thank you, Broncos Country, for fantastic discussions and for all the legendary memories of our beloved Broncos. And I really want to point that out. I thank you for that, Dale, because I'm going to try and weave in a lot more history in this show going forward. I know we have a lot of podcasts that talk about current events, and I like to stay current. I like to talk about those current events, but I'm going to start bringing in more history other than the Mile High legend that I talk about. We're going to start talking about some of these other players, because it's fun to talk about current events. It's fun to stay relevant, but there's very few outlets out there that are talking about Broncos history. And I love Broncos history. I love doing this show. And so we're going to start doing that more often. I'm going to bring in more guests, hopefully more Broncos legends if I can get them. And I'm also going to bring in somebody in the near future who, and maybe even in 2 weeks, we'll see if we can get him on. But Dr. Emmett Smith, not the leading rusher in the NFL, but a guy who has written for Mile High Huddle, but he has researched the West Coast offense extensively. And we're going to try and talk about that before preseason ends, so we can kind of see what the offense is going to bring to this season. And so it's going to be fun and interesting to hear him. Extensive researcher, heck of a good guy, and hopefully we can get him on in the near future. So Michael Ronquillo, Thomas Hall, who's having the best training camp so far? Well, it's interesting. There's some names that are throwing around. I appreciate the comment, Michael, and I appreciate the support. From what I'm hearing, there's a few players that are having tremendous camps. Some of them are people that you would actually expect. So Patrick Surtain, I mean, he's having an amazing camp, but there's a couple surprises in there. Not maybe to me, but this one's a surprise to a lot of people, I think, is Montreal Washington is really having an incredible camp as a rookie. I pegged him for that fifth wide receiver role, gadget player and returner. He's going to get some carries, probably going to get some other gadget plays. He's having a great camp from what I understand. Also, PJ Locke, as I mentioned before, having another incredible camp. And then there's, you don't hear much about some of the other players. I've heard that Christopher Allen, as an edge rusher, is actually having a pretty decent camp, coming back from injury. He's on the NFI list to start. So he's having a pretty good camp too. And those are kind of surprises to me, or to a lot of people, that they're really kind of standing out. But I'm gonna be paying particular attention to the edge rushers, inside linebackers, along the offensive line for sure, and the safety when I'm out there, because those are the key things. A lot of the other stuff is kind of getting solidified, and you can kind of understand where a lot of these players are going to be playing and lining up. You can kind of guess that they're going to make the roster or not. Dale Fleming, Draymond Jones. Yes, Draymond Jones is poised for a big year. I have talked about this, written about it. I did some studies about it. He's going to be a star in the league this year, and that's my projection for him. Last year, he didn't have the sack numbers, but he had all the other numbers that you look for when you are looking for pass rush skill or pass rush production. He's increased his hits on the quarterback, pressures, hurries. He's increased all that. Now he's going to put it all together. And I think you're not going to have that as big a competition for those sacks from Von Miller on his side. Von Miller getting to the quarterback quicker than Draymond Jones. He's going to come out this season. I say his max is 10 sacks. I think he's going to have between 8 and 10 sacks. He's going to get some recognition this year. He's definitely standing out in camp. I think having DJ Jones next to him is a huge boon that he is going to benefit from as well. So I think Draymond Jones in for a big year. EJ's coming in with a comment about a past Bronco. Bill Romanowski is another former Bronco that deserves more praise, contributed to our 2 Super Bowl wins. Absolutely. I've been writing the top 100 Broncos of all time. And, right now there's a lot of training camp stuff going on. So that's, when it slows down a little bit, start publishing those more. Bill Romanowski is one of the top 100 Broncos of all time. I don't like his antics. He was kind of a dirty player, but he was absolutely a key cog in those 2 Super Bowls. And he has a championship pedigree coming from the 49ers, came over, really helped solidify that defense on the strong side linebacker position. Incredible. Gary Leeds Palmer, thank you for coming in. Another Facebook chat. Thank you very much. I think there are a few rookies who will have breakouts, but loving DJ and the D-line. I actually think there are some rookies that have a lot of potential, and I think you're going to see Montreal Washington is going to be the big star kind of from this rookie class right away. But I love Uzurike, who is a defensive lineman. I think he's going to be in the rotation. He's a big guy. Plays with good leverage. I look for him to be pretty much a star. I mean, Benito's definitely going to be in the mix, mostly because he's going to have to be. He, with Gregory's injury and him kind of coming back into football shape, you're going to see him getting some playing time. He might be another one. A guy that's going to surprise me is a cornerback, Mathis. Taking those mid to late round cornerbacks, they don't typically work out. If you do the analytics, you look at that like I've done, they typically don't, make a big impact. But he seems to be a kind of a surprise in camp too. So you got a few rookies that you're seeing kind of emerge. So it will be fun to watch preseason to see how these rookies perform and then see where they end up in the regular season. I mean, a lot of times they look really good in preseason and then they hardly play during the regular season. But there's definitely going to be some interest for me and a lot of Broncos country in preseason watching these rookies. Albert Knoppers, where do you think the Broncos will end? Top the division. This is a good one to end on. I'm not going to do any, usually when I have a guest, I don't prepare Mile High Legends. So I'm going to end on this because I think we want to end on a high note. It's going to be fun. My personal opinion is they're going to win the AFC West and have 11 wins. And the reason I say that is because they were kind of a mess last year. The quarterback situation was terrible. Their coaching wasn't very good. Their offense wasn't very good. Their defense was, but it wasn't enough to really get them over the hump. But they still won 7 games, and they were 5 games out of first place with the Chiefs. And they're not going to be the team in the division that everybody beats up on. So they're at very least going to split that division. So you're not going to see these 12, 13, 14 wins winning the AFC West. It's going to be a dogfight to 11 wins. And I've looked at the schedule. They split if they split the AFC West and they win the games that they're supposed to win against those other teams that don't look great on paper. I know it's any given Sunday, but I think that you get to a certain point there where you're only 3 wins away from 11 wins, and so you've got to win those 3 games of the last 6 that will get you to 11 games. And I think they can do it. I think that a lot of the hype around the Chargers, maybe isn't quite deserving yet. I think the Chiefs are good, but I don't think they improved. So I think the Broncos can take this division with 11 wins. So that's my projection. and I'm going to stick to it. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining the chat. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Trying something new with a couple different perspectives on a player, Keith Traylor, who, you know, here he is as an inside linebacker coming in to the NFL, and then became a defensive tackle. And in all, he almost gained 100 pounds in his career and still is athletic. So thank you for joining. Have a great day, Broncos fans.